Hey. Hey, this is Sam Santalone here. Hey, welcome. I ga- I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I've been talking for like 2 minutes. I was going really good and I didn't realize I was live yet. So I'm sorry. I'm going to start over. Hey, guys, welcome. It's 2024. And because I'm going at this, I don't go on a script. I'm going to be saying hopefully some of the same things I just said, but we'll see. Hey, welcome to 2024. I'm excited. I feel like I've got a renewed energy. I'm excited for the year, what things will happen in the new year for all of us. I think, um, again, I feel like I've got a renewed just excitement for what's to come. So, in that, that also includes things like looking at the real estate market because I've been looking at it into the 2023 time period, thinking, okay, what's going to happen in 2024? And I was giving you some projections as to what to expect going into 2024 and what to plan for. And I will say that the things I was expecting seem to be happening, but faster than I was expecting. I think that I was thinking even interest rates would probably go down into 2024, but maybe at a slower pace. I'm not saying that it will continue to drop, but they are dropping, and I've seen them drop, enough to where um, it's sizable to where I've been hearing the conversation. The conversations have changed to a certain degree, and from originally from, hey, when interest rates drop to as interest rates drop, how will that affect buying as we move forward? So it's kind of more not a matter of if before. Now it's a matter of now that things are happening, what do I do, kind of thing. So the conversation has changed. The discussions have changed. So I think people are kind of starting to realize, okay, rates are starting to drop. What do I do? And I do think that with this potentially earlier rate drop, and I'm not saying it's going to keep doing this. I really still don't know this, but if it does happen sooner rather than later, I could see an increase in demand even more than I had expected into the early, like late winter, spring 2024 into the summertime. And so I would definitely be prepared for that and maybe start just thinking about what to do a little bit earlier, uh, just in case you can start the process earlier if that's something you can do. And again, it's this all this is discussed based on the context of you and what you can do. There's no specific requirement or time frame that you have to act in or make decisions in. This is all based on what you can do. So my goal is to help you get a framework for what makes sense for you, and you can kind of tailor it to your situation, right? So I've been having some conversations recently, and I say even recently today is a great example of conversations about how to prepare for moving in 2024. There are some people I'm talking to that are relocating in August, July. That's a pretty key time, a lot of times also for military. And this is one of the reasons that kind of was the catalyst, if that's the right word, for what made me want to do this type of live tonight, which is creating a framework for moving in 2024. And so this can include either in the States or overseas. There are a lot of similarities with both because if you're buying from a different area and you're not here, the biggest difference really is just time zones, and we can get into details specifically. For example, if you're in Japan or if you're in Asia, in your 12, 14-hour difference, or it could be in Europe somewhere. There are some differences, but it's not significant to where there are a lot of very similar concepts. And then if you have any questions you want to ask me directly about, specifics about, relocating from a very specific place, I can give you more details on that after the video, or just, send me an email, send me a text, send me a call, and I can help you with that and get more specific. But that being said, I'm talking about people in the military, people relocating from different parts of the country and the world. And that's what kind of catalyzed this, or was the catalyst for this. But this can also be if you're planning to move and you're coming for a different type of job, or you're not coming here for a job at all. You're retiring here, or you're making any sort of moving decision for family, for being close to water, whatever. Any decision that involves moving here during the 2024 time period, and you're coming and making decisions from a different area, and you're not going to be here to see it. So I want to give you a framework and time frame to prepare for the process, and then you can take that framework and then apply it to whatever specific time you plan to move to the area. So I actually did a little a PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint PDF that I'm going to walk through with you and give you that framework. And it's as specific as I can make it. There'll be some general stuff in there, but I think it's going to definitely help you as we go into 2024. And again, any more details that you need, please let me know. And I've got my contact info. This is my phone number. You can call me, text me. You can also email me. Got my email address as well. It's my name at my name, fullname.com. And you can also go on my website. But a lot of information, if you have anything that's detailed specifically to you that does not get answered here, feel free to ask me either in the comments here, or because I want to answer your questions here, or I can also email, call, text, whatever, further after this or tomorrow, whatever, later on, whenever you're watching this, you can still contact me. So number one, let me go back to the banner here. I want to see, are you watching from anywhere different than Virginia Beach or Williamsburg or Hampton Roads? If you aren't, that's also fine, but let me know where you're watching from. I'm very interested to hear, where you're coming from. Is it, Japan? Is it overseas? Is it somewhere military base? You're relocating, PCSing into this in the summertime. Are you coming for different reasons? What are the reasons? I'm very interested to hear, like where your plans are at, and what's your location, where you're coming from. Love to hear all that. So as we go, feel free to drop a comment below talking about that or any other questions that you have or comments that you have, and I will obviously follow up and want to answer anything that you have here. But that being said, I want to go into my PDF, my trusty PDF, if you don't have any questions yet. And it's going to be talking about the whole process from the purchase, like when you're buying, the specific day that you want to be here, backing it up from the very beginning of when it's best to start the whole process. And I want to go through each step, but we're going to do a reverse engineer per se, starting from the end and working our way backwards. So then you can then make a reasonable expectation and framework to how much time you actually need to go through the whole process. And so I'm going to go into, let's see, I'm going to show my screen here. And you'll see my PDF over here. And this is my first time doing a PDF. So, I'd love to hear any comments, positive or negative. But this is the plan for relocating to Hampton Roads in 2024. And you see these nice houses in the background. So the first concept here is this things to keep in mind. This is more of it's information or estimates, and it's for general info. So number one, everybody's situation is different, of course. And if you have any legal questions, anything legal related, please talk to an attorney, or lender stuff, please talk to a lender because they are licensed for that, or anything licensed wise that you have questions about that are specific to individual things. Please consult with anyone in those fields just to make sure you're getting the best information specific to those fields with someone who's licensed in that field. So that's one thing I wanted to start by saying. But that being said, let's get into it. So number one is determine your preferred move-in date. So, okay, what does that mean? I'm going to turn off the banner for now so it doesn't get distracting. I'll add that. So what does this mean? Determine your preferred move-in date. So as you see here, the date that you absolutely want to be moved in by, not find a house by, because finding a house means getting it and getting under contract, and then you close. And that closing can take at least 30 days in a lot of cases. VA, 30 days would be great. If you have a lender that's like maybe 40, 45 days, that's not ideal, but some lenders do that. So getting a lender that's efficient is very helpful. Anyway, in our example here, we're going to use August 1st as that date to plan around. This is not this. A lot of people move in June, a lot of people move in May. But if you're in military, you might be PCSing and you have a specific date you have to be coming by. A lot of people I'm talking to that are doing that are in that August time period or July. Or people I've been talking to. So I'm using this as an example if this is also you too, but this can be for anybody. The same concepts apply. So let me go back here. And so expected time frame for a closing. So first of all, 30 days is typical. So That's not hard fast. It can be a bit shorter or longer depending on the house you're interested in. Why is that part of it a variable? Well, um, a lot of times when houses get listed, people expect to list their house and it sell and have someone want to buy it and close within 30 days, or at least make an offer and close in 30 days. That's the general expectation. But sometimes people list houses and they want to maybe close a longer time period. Sometimes shorter is possible and with the right lender. But point being is that this is not a hard, fast thing. But the longer that you want to close, you want to have a house closing take, typically speaking, the more likely is an uncommon request. And the longer it is, it's something that's more of like a favor. Like you're asking the seller, hey, I want to close later. It's 45 days, 40 days, 50 days, 60 days. That's a favor I'm asking you. And so then the seller often is like, well, if that's the case, what are you giving me to say yes to that? And so sometimes you might be paying more to do that kind of thing. So just kind of be wary of that. And especially with multiple offers, asking for a longer closing date or an abnormal thing like that can lead to a weaker offer, which can affect if you get the house or not. So another thing to keep in mind. So sellers often expect around 30 days, but longer closing dates can be negotiated in some circumstances. Some sellers may ask for a quote rent back. Another thing to keep in mind, which can also be negotiated. What is that? A rent back is when a seller might want to sell a house. They want to time it towards maybe most in demand for the people that might want their house, but they might need to stay in the house longer than the closing date that they might be expecting. So, for example, if a house goes in the market on June 1st, they might be thinking someone wants to close July 1st in theory, but the sellers might need to stay in the house until July 15th or July 31st, that kind of thing. And so that's when a rent back comes into play, where you say, hey, I'll close at a certain time, but I'll rent the house back to you for a certain amount of time at a negotiated rate. Could be zero, but it could be also a rate that's also determined by the people involved. So that's a rent back, and that can happen. And that will lead me to another concept that we'll talk about later, or another this variable in the process that this could factor into. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So based on the August 1st move-in date, when do you need an offer accepted? So if you want to close on August 1st, and that's move-in date could be August 1st, August 2nd. But my point is, if you want to close August 1st, no later than July 1st is suggested. And that is on the far extreme short-term end. I would say try to target no later than the 15th of June, or around 45 days from the preferred move-in date. And that's still cutting it closer than you'd want. And the reason that the math there is 30 days plus 15 extra days of additional time for surprises or plan changes. And that's mostly, when I say surprises, it's more things that just come up during the process that you don't expect. For example, if we find a house and maybe we ask the seller to make a repair and the repair takes longer than they can do based on the closing date, well, that might take an extra few days. Or if the appraiser takes a few days extra based on the rest of the time period, and it could push the closing date out as well. So there are things that can cause the closing date to take longer. Title situations that can come up. You might have a situation that might take longer than the extra 15 days I'm talking about, but in general, 15 days is long enough, because a lot of times, I'd say a majority of times, as long as nothing surprising that's outside of the norm comes in, 30 days when the closing date is scheduled, we should be able to hit that date, or very, very close to that date, unless something weird happens. But I just don't like to encourage people to plan for no surprises at all. So adding that 15 days is why I say that. Now, you can add it more or less depending on what you feel comfortable with, but 45 days, no later than June 15th, have a house picked out to close by August 1st, with that kind of loose extra time frame. Now, the goal is, though, to not wait until the very last days to make an offer, so as to not create, not create unnecessary emotional reactionary decisions when picking a house. This is very, very important. The last thing you want to do is give yourself too little of a time window to then say, well, I got to decide in 5 days, let's just get a house. And then you're looking back and you're making a lot of long-term decisions based on short-term time frames. Is that the right way to say it? you're trying to solve the short-term problems, I guess, and it causes long-term damage, or it has long-term ramifications. Um, Remember that you'll be living in that house for 2-3 years if you're in the military, or often 5-10 years or longer if you plan to stay longer or retire here. So it's a long-term decision. So do as best you can not to make short-term uh, fixes or make short-term decisions that cause the long-term ramifications to be negative. Um, so keep that time frame, that search time period, open as long as possible so that that doesn't happen, if that makes sense. So then the question is, how much time do I need to pick a house? Well, anywhere from 7 to 10, 14 days to 45 days to find the house, like search for the house, is typical. So remember, we're backing this up. We're starting from August 1st and we're backing this up. 45 days is what I'm talking about between the drop dead date of finding a house and earlier. Excuse me, earlier. So the wider the time window of your search, the higher the chance to find the right house. This is, I mean, it's kind of just basic, kind of common sense. The more time you have to find the right thing, the likelier you'll find the right thing, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. So there are a lot of times where people I talk to and work with, they find the right house in 2 or 3 days. It's not uncommon to find the house in a relatively short period of time. Now, that being said, the research you do early before you even are on the radar of finding the right house, that research, discussions with your agent about, could be me, but about neighborhoods, about locations, about specific things that you want to look for, all those conversations early. And I say early, meaning like it could be now, 6 months away from closing, or longer. Those conversations will lead to the confidence that you'll have you'll have the right framework in mind. You'll be in sync with your agent. Me, for example, you'll be in sync with your agent. And so when the right house comes up, it might come up in that first couple of days because you've done all that work early, um, researching, talking about neighborhoods, knowing what type of areas that you want, to where you'll feel confident that house is the right one. Because it's not a matter of, oh, we're starting the search now. No, now I should start looking for houses online. You've done all that work early. So the time you're starting to look, you've already looked for houses technically for a long time. So it's not really fast. It's just shorter because you've done all the work early. So that's important. I say again, starting that search with your agent early and conversations with your agent early is very important, for that reason. Now, try to trend towards the wider side of that window. However, you may not need nearly that much time, like I just said. So necessary search time can be partially determined by type of house needed. Okay, number one, scarcity of that type of house. Number two, season of a home search, because there are often more houses that you might like that come up in a certain time period. For example, springtime, because more houses get listed typically in that springtime. Financial situation, etc. Now, when I say financial situation, why do I say that? I say that because if your budget precludes you from being able to, or allows you to be able to be more aggressive on specific houses, you might be able to find the house and get it sooner because you might be able to get the house you want on the first go around. There might be multiple offers on a house that you want, but you have the capabilities of being as aggressive as possible to get the house you want right away. If that's the case, you might not need as much time, as opposed to if you're being very specific on the budget you have and how much money you want to spend. It might lead to maybe giving yourself a little bit extra time to make sure you're not, making an offer and maybe they say no the first time. You have to go look for the next house, and then you get at that time. Well, that extra time, you want to give yourself that time to find that house. And so, based on financial situations, it might affect the time frame you might want to start looking. So the more scarce of a house or unique of a situation, it may require a longer amount of time in order for the right situation to arise. If that makes sense. If you have any questions, again, drop a question below. Again, I'm not. Let's see, where is that spot? Questions. Well, drop any questions below if you have any. All right, so I'm gonna change the banner here so to make sure if you have any questions, please ask. So, okay, so moving on. Soldiering on here. Um, so, well, before we go to the next one, I want to talk about lenders because we've talked about the general dates here. Well, actually, you know what? Let's talk about this now because then I can include some more tips, and that will include lender stuff because that's important. So recapping so far, time frame based on August 1st closing date, July 1st drop dead date, June 15th preferred drop dead date, and anywhere from 7 to 45 days from the home search time, depending on the scarcity of preferences. So in this case, for the time frame, May 1st to June 8th in this example. Now, be open to it being longer, especially if the sellers are flexible. They want a longer closing date, for example. Total days in this case in the plan is up to around 90 days from the time you start looking to the time you close, if you need more time to close. But again, if you find it too soon, you might have an issue with closing within the time frame that you want. Now, that leads to something else I want to say. Well, first we'll talk first. Be ready for the one to pop up when you don't expect it. So back to prepare for the longer side of the time frames. So if you don't need that much time, you're not rushing. It can even be longer than 90 if you find the right house, and closing earlier is also possible. That's the dynamic I want to talk about right now. The personal situations makes a big difference. So if you are looking for a house, and again, it's a little earlier in that process, and the seller is like, hey, I can't close later. I need to close in 30 days or 40 days or whatever. Well, if that happens and we find a house on May the 7th, for example, well, you might need to close in June to get the house that you want. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can do that in some circumstances. A lot of them, well, so let's generally speaking, you can, as long as you VA specifically, and I guess even conventional, but let's just use VA as an example. The VA loan, as long as you close within 60 days of moving into the house, you can do that as long as you have orders. You don't necessarily need orders to close on or to make it to get a pre-qual letter for a house with a VA loan. There are specific circumstances that you don't need that, and that's where talking to a lender will help. Some lenders will say you can't. I know for sure I've seen this happen to where you did not have orders and you can still get a pre-qualification letter to buy a house. It is very specific situations though, and that's why I would suggest talking to a lender about this that knows how to do that. But in general, keep in mind that you generally need orders, or you generally need a job offer if you plan to move here and you're working here, and your qualifications based around that. But 60 days between the time you close and the time that you move in, that's when you typically can, close on a house and still be able to move in later. The reason they have that time frame is they just don't want you to be buying it as an investment property. So they don't want you sitting there for, getting it 5 months later, you live in it, because they think that, well, you kind of treating it as an investment. They don't want you renting it to somebody else, kind of a thing. That's why they have that there. But that 60 days is helpful. So you can technically close in June if you have the right orders and the right circumstances in your offer to close in the time period before August 1st if you're moving in August 1st, and it still works. Again, check with the lender for details. But this allows you to be able to keep that window of opportunity open. You don't have to do this, but again, it's like, okay, well, does it mean that you may have to offer a rent back in some cases, like we are talking about before? Maybe. Or the house might be vacant a little bit longer than expected, which again, not ideal, but it's possible if you find the right house. There are things that we can kind of work through with that. But point is that there are options that will allow for flexibility if you find the house early, but again, not too early. Again, if you find the house in February, kind of too early, and the only option that is possible is maybe asking for a long closing date. Most people aren't going to be willing to give a 3 or 4 month closing date. And if they do, ask yourself, why are they willing to do that? And also, what are interest rates looking like? And, do you want to lock your rate in a lot longer into the process, and you're kind of leaving yourself up to the market, which might be a good thing if the market keeps going down. But my point, I guess, is to say that there's some risks there, and I wouldn't prepare too early and make offers too early, because it really is kind of a fool's errand, but not an ideal thing to do, right? So that's where it goes into, okay, if the starting to look time period is May-ish time period for like August closing time period, even still could be too early if you find the right house, or early-ish. Well, then when do you start looking for an agent or talking to a lender? The answer is as early as possible, especially the lender. Well, both, but a lender especially. And the reason is not to get necessarily qualified to buy the house now, but it's to get some conversations going to make sure you know exactly how much the payments are going to be for specific houses. Um, okay, I see. Sorry, John and Marcus, I didn't see your comments right away. I will. I'll answer your questions here in just a moment. I'm sorry. I'll just finish this concept. So the reason this is important is because the lender can give you more specific information about rates, how things may change, forecasting based on lender stuff, but also based on your specific situation, they can give you more information early that will affect the conversations you have with your agent about payments and not about payments, but more about houses and their prices. And your price range might shift after talking to the lender. That might affect what houses and types of houses you have conversations with your agent. And those early conversations will then affect, at what point you then start making offers on houses or looking for houses. You'll have already done the research on the neighborhoods early based on the correct information. So getting that early is very, very helpful. So talking to a lender early is very helpful, and the agent. And that can be now, 6 months early. I've talked to people that were moving 9 months, a year early or more. Those conversations really help refine the process and make specific which neighborhoods and houses to focus on. So you'll feel confident when you're making that actual offer and purchase decision. So that makes sense. So I'll pause this, answer your question, John. Hi, Sam. Are many foreclosures on the market these days? Will the bank negotiate on them, or do they usually sell for asking price? So number one is there aren't many foreclosures right now. There aren't many. There's some that pop up. It's just very, very rare. And part of that reason is because the people that are owning houses, while the house prices have increased, the rates have been so low. So a lot of people aren't selling because of that. So, or they don't have to get foreclosed on because they've had great profiles because they were buying based on lower rates, and also because a lot of the people that are buying maybe been from other places in the country or the world, or they're from here, but they're very well qualified. So it's just not as big of a thing right now. So in the cases where the bank are actually selling houses, will they negotiate? The answer is yes. It depends on the house, just like with any house. Their willingness to negotiate is based on the demand for the house at the price that they have listed. So I would say technically yes, but it depends on the house. I would say some people look at foreclosures in the concept of, if it's a foreclosure, it's a good deal. And so people kind of often get more aggressive with foreclosures because it sounds like a great deal because it's a foreclosure, and it's not always the case. So I would just say keep that in mind too. Marcus, hey Rob, hey Marcus, hey Sam, have you found any good duplex triplexes in Virginia Beach around 600? So Virginia Beach, it's tough. They exist in that price range technically, but it's hard to find triplexes and duplexes in Virginia Beach specifically under 6 and 7. They exist, but just very uncommon. Now, if you're talking Norfolk, yeah, they exist more so. You can get them in the threes and sometimes even in the twos if you're fortunate. But threes, fours, they can come up a lot. So even in some parts of Chesapeake as well. So they come up. They also go pretty quickly. Are you looking? I guess one of the questions is are you looking for something in a very specific time frame, or do you want something that is in a very specific area for specific like rental reasons, or you plan to live in one and rent in the other? That's another question I would have. But so the answer is yes, but it depends on the area, and you get more in Norfolk and more in Chesapeake in some parts, but specifically Norfolk and Portsmouth, a lot more cheaper ones, and you can get a lot in Norfolk for 600. You get some good options, even possibly more than threes, quads if more. But that's too high. If you want to just stay in you want to get in the you don't want a commercial loan or a more complex loan. You want to stay in the 4 or less. They do exist, but again, more so in Norfolk and Portsmouth and Chesapeake, but they can exist in Virginia Beach. So going back to the time frame, we're talking about getting lenders, getting an agent, all that stuff. Again, use 90 days as a general rule. You can definitely taper that up a bit if you know what you want. You won't have much time to try and find it. You could push that to 60 days or 45 days if you're getting real aggressive. So then, that being said, we've got the time frame right. Now, part of that plan includes money. How to plan for buying the house in 2024 based on how much money you need for the process. I'm not talking about closing costs as well. That's in the very bottom here. Doesn't include closing costs. That's more of a purchase at the end of it. I'm talking about during the process as well. But a lender will be able to help you with the closing cost estimates and all that stuff as well. But for during the process costs, home inspection is number one, which is generally around $400 to $600 for a typical home inspection. You get kind of what you pay for. You can get some cheaper probably too, but depends on the size of the house as part of this. So you can get a great home inspector, great home inspection for $425 because it might be a smaller house and it's not as much involved with the process. So there's loose there, but just plan for the $400 to $600 price range depending on what size house you're looking for. In some situations, you'll find some that will be $700 and $800. If you're talking like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, you'll see that number increase. But that's generally uncommon that you'll find an inspection more than $1,000, even if it's a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house. In rare circumstances, but it can happen, but not very common. Next is termite and moisture inspections. Now, those are a lot less, $60 to $100, generally speaking, and that can be paid at closing. So that you can also pay it up front if you wanted to, and that can often lead to a cheaper price. But this is something else is also important here because termites and moisture are very common here. Moisture is common, and because the moisture is common, they attract termites. Termites can become common. This is an important one, especially VA. Excuse me. And that kind of works. It's not a home inspection in the same kind of use of the word home inspection. It's specifically for a licensed termite and moisture inspector comes in to inspect the house for termites and moisture damage. And so there might be required repairs that might be factored into this as well that aren't even, you can get a home inspection and not ask for anything based on the home inspection. And the termite and moisture inspector still says X thing needs to be repaired in order for me to give a quote unquote clear termite and moisture letter. So that's another inspection that happens in this early stages of the home purchase process. Now, next is appraisals. Now, once you get past the home inspection time period, and you can do it before then, but I'd usually suggest not to do this. I'd wait to get an appraisal done after that home inspection is done, but it can be done earlier. And it's around $500 to $700. And again, that can vary. It can be higher or lower based on demand, based on certain circumstances that the appraiser has. But it's also determined partially by the lender as when it can and should be ordered. But usually it's often right after the home inspection is conducted. So again, they'll ask for the payment usually during the process once that is ordered. That's one of the things they'll ask you for usually is that money. So keep that in mind for when you're paying for the appraisal. And then additional inspections like a pool inspection, which can usually be around $200. There are other unique ones, but they're a bit more uncommon. And then earnest money deposits also can vary, but anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 is normal. That's of course a wide range. I found that $2,000 or $3,000, maybe $2,500 is typical in a way that is strong, shows strength for a $500,000 house or $300,000 house or maybe even 6 or 7. But it's strong enough to give strength, but not necessarily too much to where you're just kind of throwing money out there. Also, it's not so low to where it's going to be a reason maybe that someone might be more hesitant to say yes. You can do for like $1 million house, doing 10,000 is not crazy at all. 1% sometimes people will say is very standard, so the more you give, the more strength it can convey. But there's not a requirement specifically for the amount that you're giving. I just wouldn't push closer under 1,000 by any stretch. My suggestion, but it's typically refundable. Specific circumstances can cause this to be non-refundable or money given to the seller directly if you just default on the contract. In most situations, though, it's non-refundable. I'm sorry, refundable. I shouldn't have said that. It's refundable in most circumstances, and typically closing would be usually get refunded back to you. Again, the reason it wouldn't be is if there's a legal reason why you just walk out of the contract and you have no legal ramification or legal reason to get out of it. That's where they would have arguments to keep the earnest money and then pursue possibly further damages beyond that. So, but the point being is that in general, this is a refundable type of a situation, but that's something that you'd be having out of your account for the length of the closing time. So that's kind of those are the general costs of a home purchase process. So that being said, there's some more I want to add to this, but I'll answer some more of your questions. Do you believe homes currently listed will keep their value moving forward? Great question. I've been watching a few homes that I like, and the sellers slowly go down on their prices. It makes me nervous. Virginia Beach specifically. Okay, yeah. So the answer, it's kind of a loaded question. So number one is, as a general rule, first of all, what people are trying to do with house prices is, I've noticed sellers trying to test the limits of what they're expected or what they think they can get for their house. So, for example, if you have a person that's selling their house for $500,000, they might be trying for $525,000, and you can see a price reduction and another price reduction. Well, they're testing to see what their limits are. You'll find that a lot of times those prices that you see online or listed are like those outer limits of what they might not have really been able to get to begin with. They're trying to test and see, okay, is the market really still aggressive or not? And they're finding that is sometimes they've hit their limit. They start dropping. What you're also finding is it's a specific time period in the year. Cyclically speaking, you find that demand is often less in the fall and the wintertime, and especially during the holidays. So you can get better deals during that time period, but more often than not, you'll also find that demand then increases, cyclically speaking, in the winter, late winter, early spring, especially in the springtime months, because there's just more people looking for houses. And again, as more houses hit the market, but maybe not as much to fit supply or demand, you'll start seeing those prices start going up again. So it's kind of a loaded question, but if you're looking for a house, especially in the springtime, you might be surprised at how things might change as you get into that time period, if that makes sense. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. John, is Virginia Beach a growing area, and do you see prices generally increasing in the next 3 to 5 years? I've also seen decreases in listing prices, the homes I've seen online lately. Yep, same thing. Again, back to cyclical thing. Yes, you're going to find some price drops, I think. Do I see them increasing in the next 3 to 5 years? I do. I'm a little concerned if the interest rates start going down again. I could see that those prices start bouncing more than I really want them to for buyer purposes. Yeah, I do see. Is it growing? I say the answer is very slightly yes. It's an area that's landlocked by a lot of water. So you're not going to find a lot of places where growth can happen in the specific city of Virginia Beach, specifically, like, for example, or Norfolk, for example. You'll see new construction, but there's not a lot of it, So this isn't an area that's like, oh, there's tons of growth. It's just probably because of where the houses can be built. Now, there are areas in the south part of Virginia Beach where there is new construction being built because there's more land that can be built. But that being said, it's an area that has a lot of transient, like Dam Neck, Oceana, Norfolk Navy Base, up towards Langley, going up into Hampton, Newport News. There's like all the military bases. They kind of allow for some back and forth, moving in, moving out. That kind of creates stability in the market. That's one of the reasons why I feel confident in the market itself. But also, it's more of a transient area, not necessarily a booming new growth area, because it's not like a Houston, Texas, for example, where there's a lot of like newer, big master plan communities with growth in the exterior, because again, the exterior on several sides of the area is water, so it's a different kind of area. So I see stability because of the types of areas that there is here. That being said, if rates do go back, let me say this. Just because people think rates are dropping does not mean that they're going to drop. If rates go up into back in the 8s and 9s again, I can see house prices starting to sag because, again, it's all about payment and what people can afford. And so if all things considered, I like what Virginia Beach has to offer. And it's partly why I'm enthusiastic about it. I just like the area. But it's not for everybody, you know. But again, all I have to say is I do see I like what the Virginia Beach future has to offer, especially even for what they're looking for tourism and what bringing more things into the oceanfront, even outside of what's coming. People coming and going for military reasons and for business. So I do like it, and that's again also why I'm not moving. I like the area. I'm staying here, and I see positive upward growth as a general rule. That is also considering the potential for rates to go back up, which would change my opinion there, price wise, if that makes sense. I just closed on a house in Virginia Beach. Great. In November 23, using my VA loan, and would like to use my wife's VA loan to buy a duplex or triplex in 3 to 4 years. Great. Yep. That's awesome. And yeah, great. That's awesome. That's great feedback. So, let me finish off the, did I answer your question? I guess I asked you about what your plan was. Yeah. So 3 to 4 years, a lot of things can change, duplex, triplex wise in 3 to 4 years. There are some new programs out now that are allowing people to be able to get more multifamily houses for less down payments. You may have seen that. I believe it's now 5% is an option in some circumstances, which is great because a lot of times you have to put 20% down or more, 25% down to get a multifamily house. So in some circumstances too, if you're doing investor loans. So if you're if you're planning on using it as an investor loan and you're not doing a personal residence, that may be an option even going forward. Again, it depends on what options are available in the future as well. Bye. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. I'm looking for a 3-1 rental home in Virginia Beach. Is there any? Well, okay. It really depends on price. Number one, I'd say probably yes, but it really depends on, again, it's how much you can afford and there are rentals available. It's just they often go quickly too, especially as you get lower into the price ranges. So what I usually suggest for people in rentals is number one is I'm not as well versed in rentals as much as purchases, as far as, do I have access to specific ones that are like that you can't find otherwise? The answer is no. And I would say that I actually tell people the best way to find rentals has been places like Zillow. And the reason is because sometimes you can just go direct to the owner as opposed to going through an agent. And again, I'm an agent. I understand the value of what an agent brings, I feel like. But with rentals, there are a lot less hoops you can jump through with going specific to a renter, that they might be willing to give you a preferential, like say that I'm not preferential. They might be willing to say yes to you as a renter quickly, as opposed to waiting for other people to come in and fill out applications and that kind of thing. So just this thought I have is I would just check Zillow. A lot of people post houses for rent on Zillow, and they don't even do it in other places. So that could be a great option for finding rentals if you haven't found one already. So John, does a condo or townhouse usually stay on the market longer than a single family home? If I buy a condo, it seems I might not be able to sell it and sell it down the line if need be. Yes, that's a general rule. I would say yes to that. Single families usually are in more demand than townhouses or condos. Townhouses are usually in more demand than condos because of the condo fees, but it's not a blanket statement. There are townhouses that have a lot of fees too, like those HOAs that are real high. There are some that have both. And it's not just because it has fees does not mean it's going to also take longer to sell either. There are neighborhoods that are in high demand that still go quickly. Sherwood Lakes over off near Asheville Park over in the eastern part of Virginia Beach. Great example of a neighborhood that is in great demand, and you can get a townhouse in there that has fees, but may sell really quickly. So it's not a hard, fast rule. So I wouldn't just say, well, buy a single family house because they'll all sell faster than condos or townhouses. There's some nuance to that. But as a general rule, I would tend to say that single family houses uh, in general will sell faster than condos or townhouses, if all things considered, all things being equal. That makes sense. But I would not be afraid of, I would consider townhouses or condos too. I would not be afraid of that, especially in specific cities or school districts. Again, they often can go really fast because if you want a specific house or school district in a specific city and townhouses are the only option, then those will still go very, very quickly, especially like Ocean Lakes High School District. There are some neighborhoods in there that are townhouses that go really fast, but they're townhouses. So there's some nuance to that. Thank you. You're welcome. And also you're welcome. Glad to help. So now let me finish. I'll finish the PDF here. I don't want to go too late and you bleed into your time at home, but other questions past the money to prepare for moving. Here's some tips I want to say. So don't wait to start a conversation with a lender about financing if needed. So if you're doing cash, obviously this doesn't apply, but don't wait. And I'm saying, I talked about the time period for looking for a house. Don't wait until that day 90 or day 60 or day 45 to start that conversation. Start it as early as possible. And, if you have to get qualified early, talk to them about how that will affect credit score stuff. But what you don't want to do is wait too long. And if you needed to do anything credit wise that will affect purchasing, you don't want to wait too long, because if you can talk to a lender up front to get an idea of what to expect, you can plan around and make a plan for what to do before it's time, so you're not surprised, you're not paying a higher interest rate, maybe because your credit is different. Now, if your credit is 750, 800, whatever, it might not be as big of a thing, but the conversation for payment and knowing how that payment translates to neighborhoods is going to be really important for your agent to help you. Because like for me, I want to be able to help talk through specific spots with you. And if those spots change based on payment, like, hey, payment's different than I expected, I actually can afford more than I thought or less than I thought I'm comfortable with, that could change the neighborhood conversation drastically and affect the research process drastically. So earlier in the process, the better about lenders and also with your real estate agent for that same neighborhood house is a reason. The number 3 is keep your home search window as wide as realistically possible. Talking about for all the reasons we talked about earlier, I'd say keep it as wide as possible. Be vigilant with getting your job offer letter or military orders. VA buyers in some cases don't need the orders before making an offer or before getting qualified, I should say, not making an offer, getting qualified. I don't know about necessarily making an offer. That's a lender question, but discuss all lender related info with the lender to confirm that. But just make sure you get as many hard, firm plans in place, because that can often affect your qualification and getting qualified to buy and make an offer on a house and close on it. And then next is don't rely on mortgage calculators to estimate monthly payments. Talk to a lender to get accurate info, because again, that can change quickly. And the lender is going to be the one that best give you the best information, whether it be estimating taxes or insurance as well. So then be as flexible with the seller's needs and preferences as possible. Again, starting early in the process for searching, if you find the right house, they need a rent back, you can give it to them. Or maybe, if you have a little bit more flexibility, but they really need an extra 10 days to close, you can give it to them. Or they need to close fast, you can give it to them. Be as flexible, stay as nimble as possible, because in the times where there are multiple offers, you will be very happy that you can give them the flexibility that they need, because it can be the difference between getting the house you want and not getting it at all. And I just said, sorry, I recreated 2 things on this second page. So you already saw those things, being flexible and relying on calculators. The next thing, though, is the last thing, is be prepared to use multiple offer strategies when making an offer on a house. It's not 2021. It's not like 15 offer dynamics right now, but the lack of housing inventory in general means that we can't assume that others that are buying won't be interested in the same houses that we are. because just there might not be a lot of the type of house you want. So be mentally prepared for other people still wanting the same house as you want, which means if there are multiple offers, use those multiple offer strategies that may have worked really well in 2022 or 2021 or 2020. And we can talk about that. If you have questions about that, let me know. I can give you more context about details about that as we move forward as well, as far as strategizing for making the best offer possible that gets the offer accepted in the highest likelihood of that happening. Yes, thanks. You're welcome, Marcus. So that all I have to say is I love this planning process. I love the house purchase process, but give yourself enough time to make the right decisions. And if you have questions from me, you want me to help you in the process, let me know. I do this. This is what I do. And I love helping people move from other parts of the country, the world. I love it. So if you have questions in the military, not in the military, whatever, send me a text. You can call me. If you're in a different country, you can WhatsApp me or again, email me. You can also call too, I guess, depending on your phone plan, but WhatsApp, email, or Facebook Messenger or whatever, and I'll reach out to you as soon as possible. Or call me, I'll text me, I'll answer back. And if you have any questions, you can also email me. There's my email address, and then can try and make it pretty straightforward there, as well as my website if you want to peruse houses. I will say I love my website, but at the same time, Redfin's great. And I can set you up with a search with myself to give you up-to-date information as it hits the market. If you haven't done that yet, check Redfin. It's probably the best one. I'm just not a big personal fan of Zillow, but you do you, whatever works for you. But Zillow is just not always up to date as much as Redfin is, considering if you compare all the national house search websites. So if you're going to do that, I'd say consider Redfin. And I'm not being paid by Redfin. They definitely aren't paying me for that. So relocating to Virginia Beach sooner rather than later. Okay, cool. That's awesome. I hope you enjoy it here in Virginia Beach, or again, in the area. If this could be anywhere from Virginia Beach through Williamsburg, because again, I love Williamsburg and I help a lot of people relocate to Williamsburg and Newport News and Hampton as well. So if you have questions, again, drop that comment, drop an email, call, text. I'd love to help you in your relocation process. And I hope you love your stay, or whether it be temporary or permanent, here in the Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area. And for now, I will see you later. But again, I will see you on the next video, because I'll be posting videos again regularly every week, like I always do. It's been 5 years. It'll be 5 years in about 2 weeks since I started my first video and posted my first video on YouTube. It's been an amazing journey, helping all of you in this process. I love it, and I'm going to keep doing it. So I'll be posting again every Wednesday, religiously, consistently, and I will see you on the next video.